Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're looking at a very special car, the 2017 Audi S3. This is the top performing model in the 3 line, at least for 2017. So we're going to give you a little bit of a walk around, show you what it's all about, take it for a drive, and well, we're going to talk about what it's really like to live with. Now before we get out on the drive, we're going to talk about styling just a little bit, because this vehicle does have a few things that make it different from the standard A3 sedan, and you can see that primarily right up here in front. This has a unique front fascia that's got a lower grille down there. It's got a lower chin, a second chin almost, as you can see. It's got that sort of extra smile there below what Audi calls their single frame grille. Now the grille on this one, you're going to see right down here, there's a bit of an opening right there, and that's for the radar sensor. This has a full manner of driving assistance systems on it, radar, cruise control, all of those things that are now available on most luxury cars. Audi made sure that you could get that full suite available on the 3 this year. Also here we've got LED headlights. Now these light up very nicely. They've got daytime running lights that look pretty slick. All the modern stuff you'd expect with a car like this. This car also has the dynamic sport package, which means the optional 19-inch wheels that really look nice, and through them you can see this actually has the optional red calipers, which it's a pretty expensive option just for that color, but they do look pretty nice. As we come down the side here, a few things you can see is a nice thick lower rocker trim down here, and the rear fascia on this car, of course, as you'd expect, is unique to the S3. Not only is it designed differently, but it's got those big, huge quad exhaust tips. Look at those things. Now here on this car, they're actually dirty because there's exhaust on them, which means this engine really does crank out the juice. What's the better way to say that? And also here, as you can see, there's the S3 emblem and a nice lip spoiler there on the deck. So it's a pretty sexy looking car back here that does have a little bit different going on than the standard A3 sedan. The interior of the S3 is a very pleasing place to be. I love Audi interiors because, in my opinion, at least in all the ones I've ever experienced over the last 20 years, they've got the highest quality materials that you can get for almost any brand. And I'm talking about good soft rubber materials virtually everywhere you touch, soft stitch materials. When there are plastics, they're of a high quality. And the switchgear in here, of course, high quality. This is the standard by which a lot of other brands really ought to be looking when it comes to fit and finish, overall quality. Now, on this particular car, we've got some very interesting features here. These sport seats, let's start out with those. First of all, they're an optional seat in this car. They're a sport seat. They hold you very good. And I love the upholstery on these. I love this diamond stitch pattern on this. Very elegant looking. And of course, it's very popular right now. A lot of brands are offering this. I really just like it. The one thing I will point out, for the price of these seats, they're very comfortable. You won't be disappointed from that aspect, but they're not power, they're manual seats. You actually lose power seats when you go to these, and that's not a terrible thing. It's easy to find a comfortable spot, but if you're into the memory seats or any of those types of things, you're going to lose that functionality here. But at least when you're sitting behind the wheel and you're doing the business of driving, you're going to find them very comfortable. Steering wheel here, flat bottom Sport S steering wheel. There's paddle shifters on it here for the dual clutch automatic transmission. And ahead of this, this actually has the virtual cockpit display, which is available in the 3 this year. I love this display. You can put the nav map on there. You can have regular gauges. You can have any number of things you can customize. There's like 5 or 6 different ways you can have it. I'm showing the nav screen right there, and then up on the main screen there on the dash, you can just have radio or whatever, or you can choose to have your nav there. You can do it either way or both. And that's the great thing about this. You have the flexibility, and that is actually backed up by NVIDIA graphics, so it's fast, it's crisp, and I really think it's worth the optional price for that. The center console here is a reasonably good layout for driving, but the cup holders are right up there ahead of the shifter. Not the best location, especially here the way the dash sort of comes out over them, because if you have really big cups or tall coffee mugs or something like that, not really going to work because they're going to be up against your knobs there. There is a space ahead of them for your phone or your sunglasses, but again, if you're using those cup holders, you have to get around them to put your phone up there. Here in the center console, storage down here, not very much, just a very small area, not even really large enough for a water bottle. Luckily down here in the doors, there are spaces down there where water bottles can fit, and there are pretty sizable map pockets. When you sit in the back of the S3, the first thing you realize is this is a pretty small car. It is the smallest model that they offer here in North America. These seats right here, they're about halfway forward, halfway back, set for my height, 5'9", which means if you had taller drivers up here in the front or in the passenger seat, it would get pretty tight back here. Right now, my knees aren't quite touching the seats, but they would be if they came back a little bit. The other thing is, this seating position is actually pretty low. As you can see, my knees are perched up here just a little bit. It's a small car, but there is pretty good headroom right here. I've got a couple inches above my head. Now, amenities back here, I've got vents back here, which is always a good thing, especially here in Arizona, and I would expect that here in this class. You've got a fold-down armrest right here, and these seats, of course, do fold down in a 60-40 split, so you can extend the trunk space. And the trunk, actually pretty good size for a car in this class. And the best part is, even here on the S3 with the high-performance suspension brakes and these large wheels, there's still a spare tire back there, which a lot of cars in this class, especially with a high-performance package, you do lose that and you have an emergency inflator instead. So bonus, spare tire. I'm very pleased with this interior, as you've probably seen so far. I love Audi's design. I love the simplicity of it, the down to business. I love the materials, the genuine aluminum, the leather, these seats. I love these seats. Bottom line is this interior gets 5 out of 5 stars. When it comes to infotainment, this has Audi's MMI system, which is composed of a screen that pops up out of the dash here, and you can stow that away if you don't want it, but it is a screen, not a touch screen though. It's controlled by a puck down here on the center console, which is a twist knob with buttons on both sides, and then a couple of toggle buttons here just to the side of it. I have found that once you learn this thing, because there is a bit of a learning curve to navigate around and use the different menus, I do like it quite a bit. Now you can display the nav system right up there on that screen, or you can display it here on the virtual cockpit, which this car is optioned with. But if you don't have that, you can go right around here through a lot of these particular menus, and a lot of the car settings are in there too. But the great news is they've got hard controls here for your HVAC. You're not forced to use that for your HVAC, and you've got a volume knob right down here on the center console, and tuning happens right here with a large knob. So the controls, I do like them. Like I say, learning curve, but once you get there, once you learn it, it's very easy to use. Now this has the optional Bang & Olufsen sound system, which is phenomenal. Well worth the money, very comparable to the Mark Levinson you're going to find in Lexus. I like it. So infotainment gets 4 out of 5 stars. Under the hood of the S3 is a 2-liter turbocharged engine exclusive to this car, here with a high output tune of 292 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. Made into a 6-speed dual clutch automatic they call S-tronic. Same thing you're going to find in a Golf R, called the DSG there. Here it's rated at 21 mpg city, 28 mpg highway, and 24 mpg combined. Now before we get too far into the drive here, I want to point out the fact that this has a number of drive modes. This has comfort, it has auto, which actually sort of automatically determines what you're going to want depending on how you're driving, and then it has dynamic. Well, dynamic is sport, and what does that mean? That means that it actually puts this engine into a mode where throttle response is increased, the shifting from the dual clutch transmission is a little bit quicker, a little bit more on the game, and of course then it really holds your gear when you're going in and out of curves and you're really driving aggressively. My favorite one, individual. Why is that? Because it allows you to go in and tailor all the different metrics of that. The suspension, which on this car is adjustable, the steering feel, the engine and transmission. It allows you to dial those in separately, because sometimes when you go to any one of the separate drive modes, all or nothing isn't necessarily a good thing. You might like the way the steering or the suspension feels on comfort, or you might like it the way it feels on sport, but maybe you don't like the way the powertrain is on either of them. Well, you can completely tailor it and really make it yours, and that is awesome. Now powertrain here, what I like about it is it's really got some sound. Whew, pretty good power too. And in this dynamic mode, it really does hold your gears rather well on these tight spots. 300 horsepower almost. Not class topping, but fun. What I find here more than anything is this transmission can sometimes be pretty difficult to live with, and not so much out here when you're really having fun on a windy mountain road. It's more about around town when you're stopping and going in traffic. It doesn't have a really smooth takeoff, and sometimes when you're shifting from one gear to the other, it can kind of jerk, and especially if you're just creeping at a stoplight, there's a bit of a roughness to it. It's not the best DSG or dual clutch or robotic manual out there in terms of refinement. And when you combine the fact that this has an engine auto start stop system, thank God you can turn it off, because when you take off from a stop sign, when you let off the throttle and that engine's off, it takes a second for that engine to start, and then almost another second for the transmission to engage. So you'd never want to pull out into moving traffic. You'd die if traffic was coming really fast and you mashed the throttle with that engine off. There's almost a good full second delay before this thing gets moving. So something to think about, because auto start stop system, you have to remember to turn it off every time you get in the car. Now, when it comes to fuel economy, this is rated at 24 mpg combined. In my week with it, I actually got 23 mpg combined, a little bit less, but in its defense, I did drive about 75% city and 25% highway. Most of those EPA ratings are based right around 50-50. So I think we're probably right in the ballpark when it comes to fuel economy, and given the power that I kept dipping into, 23 is probably pretty good. So when it comes to rating this powertrain overall, other than the fact that it's got a few rough edges with this transmission, it's plenty pleasing when you're mashing it out here in the open. So powertrain gets 4 out of 5 stars. Now, on the topic of handling, obviously this thing's very, very tight. Now, I've got the suspension set on dynamic right now, and so it's on its stiffest setting. Steering's very sharp, and I'm on a very tight, windy road here, and it's just a nice joy to drive. It's very precise in the steering. The one thing I will point out is once you get past the joy of how sharp this is, how precise it is, how responsive it is, especially living with it every day around town, this can be a pretty harsh suspension. And I'm not complaining about a rough ride. I like a stiff suspension, but in this particular car, with the combination of the structure, it can actually feel pretty harsh at times, especially if you get over potholes, bumps, or even in town where you've just got tar strips. Living with it can tend to be a little bit harsh. And I'll tell you what, I just test drove the Ford Focus RS recently, which has a very, very stiff suspension. And that car actually felt a little bit more forgiving than this one even. And you know, this is a luxury car. This car costs quite a bit more money than that. So that was an expectation that no, I'm not sure that I was completely satisfied with here. But overall handling on this car, this is an S3. It's supposed to be all the way up, or at least almost all the way up. The RS3 coming out here pretty soon. It's probably going to be further up the ladder. So in any case, I rate the chassis here at 4 out of 5 stars. When it comes to quality, this is something that's very important to me, especially when we start talking about expensive luxury cars like this. Now, Audi, you know, Audi builds some very good cars. They're solid, they feel German. Body fit and alignment's always very good. Paint, finish, all of these things are usually always faultless. The interior as well. This car particularly, though, I will say had a little bit more in the way of the vibrations, rattles, and squeaks than I might have expected for this price range. But other than that, the quality is very good. So quality comes in at 4 out of 5 stars. On the topic of safety, this is actually a very safe car, at least according to the IIHS. It rates a top safety pick plus. This year that's a big deal because that not only means that it gets a full good rating on all of the crash tests, it also has an acceptable rating on those headlights. They're now rating headlights this year, and that's part of getting that top safety pick plus rating. All right, my friends, wrapping it up for the S3. I got to tell you, I had a lot of fun with this car. And being a Volkswagen Audi guy at heart, sort of an owner enthusiast, I found a lot to like here. But I got to say, at this price, $52,000, boy, there's a lot of other choices out there, including an A4 or an S4. And I just really look at that and I think, you know, it's just hard to really justify that price and put a value on it. I think at the base price of $42,000, very good. You're just above the Golf R, which this car is very mechanically similar to. So if you're looking at Golf R, but you can spend a few more dollars, you can go here and get something a little bit nicer. But at 52, I really think you can look at A4, S4, or even other brands of cars out there and get something very comparable to this. So I put value on this particular car at 4 out of 5 stars. When you put that in with everything else we've already talked about, we're 4 stars for the review. I'm Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the ride. All right, my friends, well, that was a lot of fun, I gotta admit. Now, if you like the test drive you just saw, I invite you to watch our latest test drive, which you can do by clicking on that big square right there, or subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the big round logo there. I'll keep you entertained, and I'll keep you informed.